Thank you for joining us here today for the second Bidoun Library Saturday seminar. We started last week with novelist Hisham Matar, and this week we're fortunate enough to host Nawal el Saadawi. The seminars continue throughout the summer. They're every Saturday. These talks are taking place with the backdrop of the Bidoun Library, a long-term project that explores the production of printed matter in and around the Middle East over the last 5 decades. We've also just launched Bidoun's latest issue, which is conceived around the revolution of January 25th in Egypt and happens to feature one interview with Nawal, among many, many others. Many of you, if you're like me, have heard a great deal about Nawal el Saadawi over the years. She's a figure of legendary stature, both in her native Egypt and internationally. Some of the legends, as she told me yesterday, are entirely made up. But for the most part, it's safe to say that she's led a uniquely heroic and iconoclastic life for herself. Nawal's father was an official who had taken part in the 1919 rebellion against British forces in Egypt. When suitors would come to seek out her hand in marriage, as per custom, she would pretend to be mad, and at least in one version of the story, blacken her teeth. She went on to graduate from medical school, become a chest surgeon, and marry a fellow student who ran off to Suez as a guerrilla fighter against the British. In 1944, she would write her first book, which is brought here, Memoir of a Child Called Suez. In the 1967 war with Israel, she volunteered as a doctor in the trenches and in the Palestinian camps in Jordan. The experience radicalized her. In 1968, she wrote her first nonfiction book, Women in Sex, which openly dealt with female desire and religion, linking sexual oppression with political and economic conditions. Shortly thereafter, she was dismissed by the Egyptian Ministry of Health, where she'd been working for 14 years. In 1981, her outspoken political views led to her being charged with crimes against the state. She was jailed for 3 months. She used the time to write memoirs from the women's prison on a roll of toilet paper with an eyebrow pencil smuggled in by a fellow prisoner. In 1993, she went to the US after death threats were issued against her by various religious groups. And she was back and forth between Egypt and the States for some time at Duke University and Emra'a University.
As exile, yeah.
As an exile. My own favorite book by Nawal is Woman at Point Zero, about a prostitute who's executed for murdering her pimp. It's become a classic in feminist literature and suggests a grim world in which death is the only liberation for women. She's published over 50 books in many, many languages. And in 2005, she announced that she would run for president, but I don't know if that actually...
In 2005?
2005, yeah. But you weren't on the ballot.
I went where?
You weren't actually on the ballot.
What do you mean by that?
You didn't actually run. Anyway, she didn't win. Today we're going to linger a bit over her latest novel, which we have here, Zena, and also open the discussion up a bit to think about recent events in Egypt, which led to the fall of the House of Mubarak. Zena is set around the 1919 revolt against British forces in Egypt and features a woman, Bidoun, who's given up a daughter and lives with the guilt born of it. Her daughter, as it happens, is named Zena, and has in the meantime gone on to be a famed singer. I wonder if we can start with Zena, and maybe you can tell us a bit more about Bidoun and her guilt.
Okay.
Yeah.
You ask me questions, I'll answer. Yes, what's the question?
The central character in the book, Bidoun.
Of the Zena.
Of Zena. She lives with this guilt because she's given up this daughter, and she's seen her daughter progress and become...
Yeah.
And what does that guilt represent for you?
Well, it's this story is real. It's a real story because in Egypt, can you hear me? You can hear me. Should I speak in the mic or because I have another mic here, but it has a whistle. You know that we live in one world. Whether in London, England, or Egypt, or the United States. I traveled all over the world, all my life. So I do not see any differences between the problem of Zena, the heroine of this novel, who was a child, an illegitimate child, who was brought up in the streets. But she was creative, talented, and that's why she pushed her way up. But then she was killed. So I was inspired by this story because I saw we have millions of children in Egypt who are illegitimate. They don't have a father. Why? This is the product of patriarchy. Because the man in a patriarchal society, whether in Egypt or here or anywhere, he can rape a girl and then go away. And she has to take the child. Here in England, maybe it is not, you don't have the stigma of illegitimate children. But in Egypt, it's still a problem, a big problem for a respected woman to be raped or to have sex before marriage and then to be pregnant. What she's going to do? So many of the very respected women like this Bidoun in the novel, who was a professor in the university, she gets rid of the baby. Either she put it in the street as Bidoun, or she kills the baby, drown it in the Nile. Get rid of it, because it will ruin her life if she becomes an unwed mother. So the story is the story of this child who was in the street. She didn't know her father or mother, but the maid, what's her name? Zinat. Zinat took care of her. And she was the maid working at Bidoun house. And you can see the connection. And the little child, who was illegitimate, was always visiting the mother without knowing. The mother knew that this is her baby, but the child didn't know that Bidoun is her mother, because the mother was afraid to acknowledge that this is her baby. But the mother was afraid to say, this is my daughter. And that's why the daughter didn't know that this is her mother. She thought that her mother is the maid, Zinat. But the story goes on. It's very, you have to read it because it's very, very difficult to summarize a novel.
The book is set during the 1919 revolt.
Slowly and clearly.
The revolt, the book is set during 1919 and the revolt against the British. And there's some parallels between the current moment and the history of the story, between the Egyptian revolution that just passed.
The Egyptian revolution of 1919.
Yes. And the current moment.
And then the revolution of 1952.
And 52 as
because
well.
Because Bidoun, her mother, lived the revolution of 1952.
Right.
And so there is a link. Usually in my work, I cannot separate between the politics of the country, of the whole world, global politics, national politics, and sexual oppression of children, of women, of men. It's all connected. We cannot separate. I cannot deal with women issues or sexual problems or illegitimate children or patriarchy without dealing with class, capitalism, race, religions, because it's all connected. When you disconnect, you don't know. Knowledge comes from linkage. When you link, then you understand.
Is there a sense of history repeating itself?
History repeating?
Yeah, I mean, could this story have easily been set in the current moment for you?
Yes, in a different way. Yeah. Because history is repeated in a very, if it repeated itself exactly the same, it would be very stupid history. But history is not that stupid. It repeats itself, but in a very creative way, in a different way. There is always things we don't know that comes.
Most of your books consider the inner life of women and their struggles, their desires, their fates. What would you say binds these female characters together in all of your fiction work? And to what extent is this born of your own experience, do you think? I mean, who are these women in your...
This is in relation to the novel?
this novel and all your other fiction, there's always sort of a
what's the
strong...
question? Please, I don't understand your English very well. Clearly.
No,
and make it Egyptian accent, not British accent.
It's kind of out of... but the female characters...
Yes.
Yeah, where do they come from? Where does the inspiration for your female characters? How much, to what extent is it a composite of Egyptian women? Is it born of your own experience?
Well,
Who are these women?
Many of you are writers, I think. We are all writers. We are all born creative. We are all born writers, musicians. We are inspired by the faces we see in life. You know, when I look at you now, I am inspired by faces. I can write a short story about you. I can, yes, so all my personalities come from life. The people I meet everywhere, anywhere. I may stop by a face suddenly, and I am inspired by a novel, just by a face. So it's all come from real life. And Zena, I saw Zena. We have thousands of Zena in the streets in Egypt. I saw them. I meet them every day when I walk by the Nile. And they are embedded in me, and I think about them. I dream of them, and then they come in a novel.
Right. I'm curious, you've written a lot of nonfiction as well as fiction.
Non-fiction, yes.
But I've read that you consider fiction your real passion, or your...
Yes.
What is it that fiction can do that nonfiction never can?
Well, you know, I teach creativity and dissidence, the relationship between creativity and dissidence. I've been teaching this topic for more than 25 years in many universities, except in Egypt. They don't allow me to teach creativity in Egypt because creativity is danger, and it's related to dissidence. It's related to the revolution. The revolution in Egypt came because of revolutionary ideas in books, in novels, in articles, etc. So I do not separate between fiction and non-fiction. Usually when I teach creativity, I say that. I do not separate between the body, the mind, and the spirit, and the society. You know, I'm a medical doctor. I was a surgeon. So why should I write about history, religions? But I had to re-educate myself, because the way we are educated does not give us creativity or knowledge. In fact, education kills our creativity by splitting and separating the physical from the mental, from the spiritual, from the social, from the political, from the economic. That's education. Education is based on splitting of knowledge. So we end up by knowing nothing. We become good physicians, good technicians, but not creative people. And that's why creative people are very few, those who escaped the oppression of education. As I was telling Amal, where is Amal? She's not here, yes. As I was telling Amal while we were coming in the taxi, you know, when I go to my class, at the first time I meet my students, I tell them I cannot teach creativity and I cannot teach dissidence. But what I can do is to undo what education did to you. So education kills our creativity. It takes our courage of childhood. Amal was saying, you know, when I was a child, I was very brave. I faced the public. I stood on stage. I was not afraid. But then when I grew up, I became an adolescent. And then in university, I started to be timid. Something in the education system took my courage. That's it. I told her, because you quote everybody except yourself. You have to quote yourself. You have to have confidence in yourself in order to be creative. You have to link all areas. I started to link medicine to surgery, to politics, to economics, to religions, in order to understand women problems. In order to understand any problem, I have to link. And this never happens in universities. We specialize. And this is a disaster. Of course, we need to specialize, but we have to re-educate ourselves again and to reunite. And now in very good schools, I don't know about Europe, in very good schools in the United States, I was invited to medical colleges to speak about literature. They teach literature to medical students. They teach music to medical students so that they become good doctors. They become good human beings. Because a good doctor must be a good human being, that he feels or she feels the pain of others. So I want to bring this novel in its broader sense, that when we write a novel, it's not just fiction. It's fiction and non-fiction. It is reality and dreams. There is no separation between reality and dreams. So we have to look at that. There is no separation between the conscious and the unconscious. I told you before, no separation between the body, the mind, and the spirit. Also, there is no separation whatsoever between the conscious and the unconscious. Creativity does not come from the unconscious, as Freud said. No, creativity comes from the superconscious. When you link, when you undo the oppression of education, when you start to understand, you have a vision, a broader vision, you put yourself in the world and not to be limited to your own area. I know many doctors who are surgeons, very good surgeons, but you cannot talk to them because they know nothing about outside their surgery or economics or anybody who specializes. They are very good technicians. They specialize very well, but you cannot talk to them. They know nothing about what's happening in the world, so they don't have a cause. They don't fight for others, and that's the aim of education. The aim of education in every country, including here, because I was teaching creativity and dissonance here in London last year. The education system in England, like United States, like Egypt, it does not make you aware. It robs your common sense from you. It robs your courage to fit within the patriarchal capitalist system.
So how do you teach it? What happens in those courses? What happens in those courses that you teach?
In those
on
courses?
creativity?
Oh, yes. Well,
how do you undo the damage of the educational system?
Well, I've been doing that years. I trained myself. Training is very important. You learn from training. Usually they say genius is training. We are not born genius. Of course, there is little effect of genes, but the most important is training. When you want to be a very good musician, like Mozart, you have to train. So I was training, I was teaching and knowing how to teach creativity and this through the years. And the courses, I learned from my students, the courses is not like ordinary courses. It's different. So the students talk, I talk, they remember. I try to encourage them to remember, because there is a relationship between remembering and creativity. And we lose our memory since childhood, and we call it childhood amnesia. So we have to forget our creativity, our courage, our spontaneity. We shouldn't be spontaneous. We shouldn't be primitive. We shouldn't follow our instincts. We have to prepare everything. We have to calculate. We shouldn't use our brain very quick. No, we are not used to that. So I undo that. I teach spontaneity, how you become spontaneous, how you follow your mind, how you don't wait for others to tell you what to do, but you trust your own mind and work it quickly. And training make you You think very quickly with your mind, not in a slow way. Education makes us slow in thinking, very slow, because we wait for the ideas of others. We are not inspired by our brain. We are inspired by other brains, so we wait. But spontaneity means you be on the spot. You don't wait for others. Some people cannot give lectures without reading the lecture. You know, I don't like reading. They told me you have to read a piece of your book. I said, why should I read? You have the book. You can read while I am in Cairo. But here, we are here physically. We have a physical communication. We have to use that to talk, to ask questions, face to face. This is very important. But we are educated to read, to look at the book. When I was teaching my American students, they never looked to me. They were taking notes all the time. So I told them, don't take notes, look to me. Try to use your mind. So it's you know, you have to start to undo the bad habits of education and to build new habits. And it takes time.
I'm interested in this multifaceted approach. So
Slowly, please.
linking economics.
Linking economic
to gender and to politics.
Okay.
And earlier we were looking at this paper, and it said that mentioned women in Islam. And this is a very popular way that you are perceived. That you know, you're sort of a.
Well, there is something wrong in this bio. They said here that she has written many books on the subject of women in Islam. I never did that. Paying particular attention to the practice of female genital mutilation. You know, I have 47 books, and my lines about female genital mutilation are few. This is how the West look to us as writers, because Islamophobia, you know, I wrote about Christianity, about Judaism, Hinduism. I went to India because religions are all the same. Here in the West, they think that Islam is the only religion that oppresses women, which is not true. All religions oppress women and the poor. All religions, they have very racist ideas, patriarchal ideas. Men are superior to dominate. All the problems we live are in religions, because what is religion? Religion is a political ideology, whether Hinduism or Judaism or Islam. It's politics, it's economics, it's about war, about greed, about oppression, about everything bad in the society. Religion is part of the society. Religion does not teach morality. Religion teaches double morality. And when you have double morality, it means no morality. Morality for men and morality for women. So there is no morality. The basis of morality is one standard. So we must have one standard of morality. Men, women, rich, poor, rule, president, and everybody, one standard of morality. But no, we don't have that. We don't have that in any country. Men are allowed sexual promiscuity. A man can rape a girl and just fly. And he is not punished. In Egypt, if a girl is pregnant outside marriage, she is the one who is punished, not the man, in the law. And many things. A man can marry 4 wives. A woman, if she just looks to another man, she is punished. So how can we say that religion teaches morality? And this is embedded in all religions. So I didn't write, they said she wrote about women in Islam. No, I wrote about men and women in all religions. And I was critical equally to all of them. And then female genital mutilation. I am against cutting children, whether male or female, because I think here in England, in Europe, and in America and in Egypt, everywhere, they cut children. Male circumcision is very harmful. I'm saying that as a doctor. It's very harmful to cut male children under so-called circumcision. Of course, the harm is not as great as the girls, but it's harmful. How come that a child is born and then after 7 days you cut him by the knife? And I have seen many tragedies myself. Sepsis, bleeding, male children died and female children died of circumcision. And the society continue to do that blindly. So I am against, they don't mention that. I'm against male circumcision. They never mention it. They are silent about male circumcision everywhere, especially in America. Because of the Jewish influence, male circumcision is mentioned in the Old Testament. So they don't touch that. But they speak very, very easily about female genital mutilation, and they don't put it in its historical context. They say, well, because of Islam, they link it to Islam. In Egypt, Christians and Muslims are circumcised, male and female. No difference between Christians and Muslims in Egypt in any value system. They are the same. But they pick up only Islam and say that Islam is the only undemocratic religion. All religions are undemocratic. They say Islam circumcised girls. All religions attenuate the sexuality of women somehow. Why? Because of patriarchy. It's common sense. Now, you know that, what do you mean by patriarchy? Patriarchy means the name of the father. Children should be named according to the father, not the mother. In ancient Egypt, women, we carried the name of the mother. That's natural, because the child comes from the body of the mother, known, but the fatherhood was not known. Fatherhood was not known in history, except relatively, very recently, when we started to know about embryology and fertilization in human life. Patriarchy came when men started to know the role in fertilization. Before that, they didn't know. They thought that some spirit from heaven come and make women pregnant. And that's why you see that most of the prophets had no fathers. Christ, we know Mary, Virgin Mary. We don't know his father. So the society said his father is divine, because they didn't know about fertilization. So when men started to have power, economic power, and the power of knowledge that they have share in this baby, so they should give their name to the baby, etc. For many reasons, economic, political, sexual, patriarchy started. And children took the name of the father. And this created a big problem for children when the father is not named. Children of rape, for instance. What we are going to do with illegitimate children. And here in Britain, what year? I think you had a problem of illegitimate children till recently. I don't know when you started to abolish the differences between what we call legal and illegitimate children. I don't know, maybe you know, how many years ago. It's quite recent. It's quite recent. So we have to read history. We need to read history to see why we have these problems of women or children, or even problems of creativity or anything. We have to read history.